Welcome to WorksheetCloud Grade 9 English. I'm Mrs. Nortier, and if you don't know by now, I'm going to be taking you through a Grade 9 English lesson today. We're going to be doing poetry. I know that we've been doing poetry for quite a while if you have been watching, and poetry is just so amazing because there's just so many different facets and ways to relate to things that are happening now even or just in current times. So I hope you're excited for another poetry lesson. I always love teaching poetry because I feel it is such a good way to express emotion and just to understand human connection and interaction. So before we get started now with all this exciting poetry, just a reminder that if you need any further clarification or any assistance after the lesson, during even, if you're not sure about something, please do email grade9@worksheetcloud.com. You'll see it is there on the screen for you. And any extra information that you require will then be sent back to you. All right, so on that note, start with seeing or trying to describe a certain sound and image can make you feel. So just listen to the sound in this image and have a look at the video and think carefully about what it evokes within you. It's different for everyone, there's no right or wrong. Right, so as you can see, it is snowing. We're obviously not very used to that in South Africa. You can also hear rain. Almost sounds like torrential, quite heavy downpour. Sounds a little bit windy. And then you can see the snowflakes falling. So a very typical winter setting, more so, like I said, not really for our country, but you've at least been able to imagine, see this on TV before. So I'm going to give you another 10 seconds of listening to it and just again think about how it makes you feel. Right now, I am very much a winter person. I love winter. In fact, I hate summer. I don't like the sun. And so for me, that setting and just listening there to the rain, a little bit of wind, watching the snowfall, it is so peaceful and calming for me. However, if you don't like the cold, you'll look at that and you'll immediately stir up a little bit more of a negative connotation. Some might even go as far as to say that winter, the lack of sunshine, and that incessant rain makes them feel really sad. I don't know if you guys have actually heard about this, but in some European countries where there's very little sun in winter, and also it gets dark very early. And then, some people go to work and it's dark and they come home and it's dark. And they actually go through what's called, or some of them have sun therapy or light therapy, where you actually get exposed to a light just so that you're not completely wrapped in darkness. Now, for me, that wouldn't be an issue. Like I said, I love winter, but I know for a lot of people, not being able to see the sun and have that type of climate would be a problem. So that's why this setting, I'm going to press play again just for a bit. This setting can either stir within you peace and comfort and sort of that cozy feel, or you can look at this and think, no ways. This is terrible. I feel sad. I feel desolate. I want sun. Right? So again, it's a personal preference. Now, that ties in with the poem that we are going to be doing today. I'm first going to watch a video or allow you to watch a video. The poem is called Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. So, already you can understand that snow and winter undertone. And we're going to look at this poem afterwards, after you've had the reading. And we're going to try and see, what is it? Is it a poem about deep sadness? Or is it actually just a really peaceful poem about the snow? All right, so take a listen, decide for yourself, and then we'll start going through an analysis. And then also, just so you know, Robert Frost, very famous poet, he wrote the poem, and we'll get to also his take on the poem.
Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Read by Exie Sands. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. You will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near between the woods and Frozen Lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Oh, the woods are lovely, dark and deep. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. This has been Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost.
So there you had the
Read for you
poem
by
being
Exie
read, and
Sands.
you had a really nice visual at the same time of the falling snow, the dark woods. Now, the dark forest can also be quite ominous or threatening or scary. It doesn't always look very appealing, but to some people it might be a place of absolute peace. So we're now going to look at this poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. And we're going to start trying to identify what we think. And it just shows you how one poem can have such a different interpretation because we all bring our own emotions to it. Then we'll have a look at what Robert Frost actually says about the poem. Okay, so just a brief summary. The speaker in the poem is traveling at night through the snow and through a forest area. He is on horseback, so that's why there's a reference to the horse, and he decides to stop. He stops and surveys the scene. The horse is cold and doesn't understand why they're stopping in the middle of nowhere and kind of shakes his harness bells. This wakes the speaker from his reverie, his dreaming, and decides he needs to go on. He cannot stay rooted here. He has to move and go back to the village or to wherever the nearest town is. So it sounds like a very, very basic, almost little story or descriptive moment in someone's life. And that really is the gist of the literal explanation. All right, so summary aside, the structure of this poem, when you see it, is always constructed as 4 very similar stanzas. And just in terms of the rhyme scheme, what you'll notice is that the third line of every stanza then rhymes with the next stanza. So it just shows you that connection. So maybe we can already take from that there's a connection, but something happens in the 4th stanza where it just breaks away from this. All right, so there's also then a change. Tone is always the emotion surrounding this. And like I said, this is not very interesting because many readers can feel calm or serene and others feel, no, it's so dark, it's so depressing. Very different, depends on your feelings that you bring to this poem. The theme of the poem, it's about isolation. I mean, think about it. He's all by himself, standing there. Yes, he has his horse, but I mean, in terms of human connection, he's alone. And he seems to have to make a choice. Do I go back to the village? Do I go into the woods? And we'll start seeing that those choices may have quite a lot to do with life's burdens. So we'll get to that. See, we often read into poetry so much, and sometimes we need to, and other times we don't. We'll get to what Robert Frost says later. Right, so let's begin. Line 1. And I've given you some nice imagery, some images, just to help focus and also maybe get across that emotion. All right, so he stops at the woods. It's a forest, and he looks around and he thinks he knows who this land belongs to. Right, remember, as much as we like to think nature is very much free and boundless, there's always property ownership somewhere. So he stops and looks at these beautiful woods and he says, I think I know who owns these woods. Right, so already we have a sense of ownership coming through. His house is in the village though. So the owner of this forest area, of these woods, he lives in the village. All right, maybe it's the mayor, maybe it's the owner of the town. And try and imagine a village, and then on the outskirts, you've got the forest. So he owns it, but he lives in the village. Now, that's quite for us rational. I mean, you would live in the village because that's where civilization is, that's where people are. However, the woods are also something that maybe a more introverted person would like. So now you start thinking, is this actually maybe about being an extrovert wanting to always be around people, or an introvert where you really just need your alone time? Again, are you reading too much into it? Okay, so he will not see me stopping here. So the owner of these woods doesn't seem to go into the woods very often. So again, he loves being around people and civilization, but the speaker seems to quite like this idea of being alone in the forest. To watch his woods fill up with snow. Now, again, for me, this would be such a peaceful, wonderful outlook, getting to sit back and just watch the snow falling. Some of you are now thinking, no ways. How freezing must it be? I want to get straight into a nice, cozy house with a fire. While other people are saying, no, experience the serene calm and beauty of the snow. All right, so he stays to watch the woods filling up with snow. Now he's on a horse, he's on horseback, and he's saying, my little horse must think it queer. Queer means strange. So even the horse is going, no, we need to get back. All right, so he really does feel quite alone. And I think introverted people often feel like this. Everyone else kind of judges them. No, why don't you want to be around people? No, why must you always be alone? Some people just prefer it like that. To stop without a farmhouse near. So the horse could actually be society, judging him for wanting to be somewhere where everyone else isn't. Okay, so now we have again these two different looks. Maybe some people prefer alone time and the beauty of nature. Others love the hustle and bustle of a city. But we shouldn't judge and think that the other one is strange. Everyone is just different. Between the woods and the frozen lake. So now we know that there's a lake. It's so cold, it's frozen over. So now this is where he has stopped and he's looking around. The darkest evening of the year. Now, in a geographical term, we have in South Africa the darkest evening on the 21st, 22nd June, the winter solstice. Now, that's the darkest evening. It's also the longest evening, the longest hours of nighttime or darkness. So now it seems that he's really chosen the very heart of winter to go on this journey in the woods. Here's where some people start debating it a bit differently. Some people, some critics, contemplate or think rather that Robert Frost might have been contemplating death. Maybe he was in a very, very dark place emotionally and he felt so alone, and that's why he is writing about these lonely feelings. Maybe he just wanted alone time and it wasn't a depressing thing, but more of a calming situation for him. This line, though, does often have people looking at it quite differently. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. So the horse is cold. The horse shakes his little harness bells almost as though he's saying to the speaker, come on, why are you here? This isn't right. We need to go back. So maybe if he is contemplating death, something, remember we still said the horse might symbolize society. Maybe society has said to him, no, come now, we are actually here to help. Don't isolate yourself. A little reminder to come back to society and get help. Or the horse is just cold and is telling him, let's go back home. The only sound is the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Flake refers to the snowflakes, but so quiet. You can only hear the wind and the snowflakes. Again, I find that peaceful. Others will find it eerie, maybe even a bit scary, a bit depressing. Again, we're not sure how the speaker is feeling. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. Right, so notice the alliteration there as well with dark and deep. This picture in front of you, for some of you, you would think, no, this is darkness. It's not appealing to me. It looks very scary. Some would go, oh, it looks so beautiful, so serene. Now we have to ask ourselves, is the speaker trying to escape from civilization, the village, and trying to move into a very depressing place? Or is the speaker just trying to find a lovely calm in between the chaos of civilization? Up to you how you want to look at the picture. But I have promises to keep. So now we do start thinking, hold on. He wants to escape to this dark place, but he realizes that he has promises. Maybe a family. Maybe he has promised family he will try to get better, and he knows that he owes them. He wants to spare them pain, and he should go back to them. He has miles to go before he sleeps. Literally, maybe this just means he still has a lot of traveling to do before he can stop. So he's saying, no, I can't stop here. I still have a long way to go. Let me get to a motel, a cabin. I'll rest there. Then he repeats that same line, and miles to go before I sleep. Now we think, why repeat it? Is there a deeper meaning? Does it mean I still have a lot of life to live before I die? Right, so now we start asking, is it literal? Is it figurative? Is this man talking about a beautiful snowy evening? Or is he talking about being very, very depressed and contemplating your life's purpose? Who better to hear it from than Robert Frost himself? Robert Frost says, as I remember it, stopping by woods on a snowy evening was written in just about that way, after I had been working all night long on New Hampshire, which is another literary work of his. But I must admit, it was written in a few minutes without any strain. Critics think I had a sort of all-night struggle before I could write this little poem I'm talking about. They must have heard me say in another context that maybe I wrote all night and they thought it was this poem. But I actually just went outdoors, didn't disturb anyone in the house. At about 9 or 10 o'clock, saw this beautiful snowy evening and decided to write about it. Look what he says here at the end. You can't trust these fellows who write what made a poet write what he wrote. We all read our theories into a poem. And I think we also sometimes want to delve deeper. We think, no ways, this poem can't really just be about a man on his horse observing a beautiful snowy forest. but sometimes life is really that simple. I know Robert Frost was someone who definitely did write very metaphorically. So I don't know if I actually quite believe him, but then again, maybe I'm just bringing my own theories into this. So ask yourself the question, was it about a snowy evening, or was this man in a very sad place? I hope I've left you with something to think about, especially just in terms of how we interpret poetry and what we bring to a poem. I can see it one way, and you can see it a totally different way. And then the poet can come and tell us we're both wrong anyway. Thanks for watching grade 9s. I hope you enjoyed the poetry journey Snowy Woods. This lesson was brought to you by me, Mrs. Nortier, and WorksheetCloud. Hope to see you guys again very soon. Bye.